people you should really grow food in your yard because it really can change your consciousness by eating food from the dirt and the soil, and you get microbes and all that other stuff. But so Steiner was like a nutritionalist, and he educated people in nutrition. That's why we have a huge branch that comes off of anything Steiner, especially biodynamics, into the Weston Price arena. And then, we also have Victor Schallenberger's work that comes off as a branch too, that the involvement of all that. But Waldorf, community, CSA, where you buy your boxes of produce from your farmer before your farmer does it, CSA boxes.
Community-supported agriculture.
Biodynamic farming. There's a lot of things that come from biodynamic farming that a lot of people don't really know. But anyway, so Steiner would educate the doctors. He would go...
They're not educatable. That's part of the problem. We think doctors are educated people. They're not. They're just shore attendants, right?
They're, dock attendants. But in Europe, you can go to school. There are schools. There are anthroposophy medicine schools. And so once you get out of medical school, you can go to anthroposophy medicine school. And I took 3 years of online anthroposophy plant medicine studies, which was amazing. But you can go to the school and then you can get the anthroposophy credential on top. It's not available in the U.S. though. There are some workshops and people do some, trainings and stuff like that, but it's hard. Like, for example, they're so snobby that, I have a huge amount of credentials, but I don't have that MD. So I get kind of thwarted when I want to go to, anthroposophy certifications and stuff like that. So I have to kind of pick and choose. But so Steiner, they say that he, during that time frame, he had the same abilities as a lot of people that hit the ground during that time period. You have all kinds of people that were brilliant, that were also kind of working with a field of energy, that were also mystics, pulling in information from the future. And so they said that, Rudolf Steiner could see, 500 years into the future and see what the planet was going to look like, what kind of, communicating with the energy fields. And that's how he came up with the preparations for curing the soil. Because he said that the vaccines were going to kill people, and this was before there were vaccines. And a lot of the stuff that we have now that's killing the planet and killing us, he warned about. And he said, like, in the future, there wouldn't be very many areas left on the planet where you could actually grow food. And we're in that right now. I mean, we're in that right now. I mean, Dane Wigington, who's a friend of mine, geoengineeringwatch.org, he said that a lot of the scientists that he's been working with say that we have like 8 years left and there won't be a tree left alive because of the chemtrail spraying.
Dane Wigington is an alarmist who really doesn't understand his science well enough to not put his foot in his mouth and get people who understand it to disrespect him. If he would listen to the people who he brings on and not argue with them, he might actually advance his cause a little farther, but I think he's very angry at somebody.
Who's that? Who are you talking about?
Dane Wigington.
Yeah, I stand behind Dane, and
he does good work.
That he has a lot of people that are nutbags that try to, steal his show, and I think that a lot of those people that were in that movement and other movements have no real understanding. But anyway, that's my opinion.
There's something there's something here before we let this go, because I'm working on something conceptually about groups, And individuals, when they work in groups, tend to get shut down by the group because of the attitudes of the members of the group, and the groups themselves take on personality once you get to a group of more than 5 to 8 people. And so once the group takes on its own personality, then people coming into the group have to deal with the groupthink. And the groupthink is established by the dynamics of the individual people that originally made the group. But there's orders of groups, and what I'm trying to get at is that the groups that we have, the orders, the way things work, don't work for individual humans. And so Dane is now in a focus area where there's more information than an individual can comprehend without assistance from other individuals. But we've been so compartmentalized by the system to turn to the experts with those letters behind their name, like MD, that the people who have the real information are shut down by the group before they can even talk about what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the good thing about America is everybody can have their opinion, but what happens is the group becomes the mob.
Right. And it's not at that level of 5 or 6 people, but that's where the mob mentality starts, is when you concede something that you know is right to a rest of a group of people, because it's easier to concede to them and let them have their way than get it right, and that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
You can't ever concede on a point where you know you're right, although you can concede to agree to talk about it or to hold that opinion until evidence changes further. But the cutting edge of the evidence that we use to prove things in the society doesn't hold up to scrutiny. And so a lot of the proofs that we've been given all throughout our education for everybody alive from this education system are so distorted from the way reality works that we live in the United States of oblivia, and the rest of the world already has this all figured out as part of the BRICS and the reevaluation and stuff. And it's just that they're not going to bend it to fit American sense of fairness, because the American sense of fairness is complete nonsense. It's totally unfair to everybody.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is Americans don't know it, that their media is the most controlled in the whole world. Their systems are the most controlled because they've believed in the American dream and freedom for so long, that basically they're like in denial about a lot of this stuff, and they don't have the proper thought processes to actually think their way through.
Right.
Be able to think things out for themselves. And one of the things, like when I was young, and all the shamanism type training, that I've had, and is the number one thing that their focus is critical thinking. And a lot of these really exceptional, shaman type people, they prefer to work with people who have the ability to critically think. Be able to look at something. Because when you go into an altered world, there aren't friendly beings in there. Every kind of, we want to call it dimension or world or whatever else that you're going to travel into, you're going to have to deal with the good and the bad. And if you can't critically think now in your physical body, and then you start to travel into those worlds, you are either going to be severely harmed in those worlds, and then if you do make it back to your body, you do make it back to your body, otherwise your body dies, or you get hitchhikers that come back with you. So, critical thinking is super important to be able to travel, and master kind of other worlds. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing any kind of dreaming medicines or anything like that until you have like the simple, because, you have to look at a being changing all different kinds of looks, trying to get you hooked in. Because once you show up into their world, they notice you. They're like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. And you're traveling in there, looking around, and you're surrendering yourself to it, and when you should be like critically thinking and asking these being questions and turning the questions around on them, to really understand what they're saying to you, what they want, because they may in some cases be linked to you forever. I know people who have done ayahuasca and came back with beings that they will live with for the rest of their life, because there's no place to send these things. And they are extremely dangerous, and they're extremely harmful, and they're extremely aggressive. So critical thinking is, both sides of your hemisphere working together, your two brains igniting and kind of working together, and you trying to, figure something out, come to a conclusion. And I think most Americans, I deal with a lot of people, even the ones that are kind of awake. I also have clients that are MK Ultra, all kinds of different kinds of people. But it's interesting that when they first show up, no matter how conscious they think they are, they still can't work a critical process. And this is the reason why they can't, make it out of the hole that they're in.
Well, you've explained a couple of things that I want to reinforce, just because I look at things from a different perspective than you do. And when we come to the same conclusions on depthful topics, it really is more meaningful, because it verifies that we're both dealing with the reality of the truth as it exists. Because we didn't pre-plan this conversation, but the ability to critically think is of utmost importance. And critical doesn't mean against. And as soon as you start critically thinking in this society, the people who don't want to hear it think you're a hater, say you're against them, and shut down the critical thinking process. And that's what we're dealing with, is we're dealing with people who don't want to critically think, and think that anybody else critically thinking is against them because they're against thought. They tell you don't discriminate, when to discriminate is to use your ability to think and pass judgment for yourself on the situation that you're dealing with. And if you can't discriminate and use all the information that you have available to make your decisions, you can't get the right decision, because every new facet can turn the decision-making process. So by being told don't discriminate, we are already legislating against critical thought. What we should do is take everything at face value and either start off with, yeah, I can believe that, or no, I can't believe that. And whether your answer is yes or no, there's a different path to critical thought. For something that you don't believe, you want to prove it to be true. For something that you do believe, you want to prove it to be false. And if we get into the mindset of flipping those around and proving things false and letting go of them, but not accepting truth as ever proved, then we're on a groupthink that works for individuals. But right now, groupthink is always dominant over individual human scale thought, and the New Way will never accept that, because human scale is where we're thinking. So we could throw out a slogan at any time and poll the audience on what they might think about that slogan, and just that poll will tell you about the wedges that have been put in to divide people from each other.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, though, is that Americans want a quick fix because they've been spoiled. And their life has been fine. I mean, we haven't, I don't really count Hawaii. Sorry if people get mad about this, but I don't really add, Hawaii being bombed, by the supposed Japanese or whatever went down, as, war on American soil. I mean, we haven't really, had our whole city blown up with bombs and not be able to stop it, and our government not be able to stop it.
Since the Civil War. But the Civil War was us blowing up our own cities with bombs. What was that about?
Well, right, but that's the thing is, like, it's not like Syria, where you have, like, 4 countries that are bombing the crud out of Syria because there's, like, Syria is the last place where Aramaic is spoken, right? So you want to know why Syria is being bombed by all these countries? Because they don't want what information that's in Syria. They don't want these people who are the last remnants that speak Aramaic that could, undo some texts or any kind of this information that may have been there. They don't want it out. So what do? 4 countries go in and totally annihilate and decimate Syria. Where Syria, it turns out, has had amazing colleges. Like, not the kind of colleges when we think of college. They had some of the most, beautiful architecture. I mean, they were a very beautiful people, a very beautiful civilization that had a lot of ancient old knowledge and information, right? So that's, so they're totally wiped out. They're totally destroyed, like basically rapid fire. In America, we've never had anything like that. We've always had water. We've always had power. You have options for living. You have options for food. Even the most homeless, aren't starving to death. And even the people that, are under the bridge. I mean, there's still, a utopia of a lot that we have here. And so we haven't really suffered. And so we don't. I remember a friend of mine who had studied all kinds of different stuff. They studied like yoga, and they studied, like Tai Chi and martial arts, and went all over the place. And one of the things that he said in his older years was that you could tell which countries had military type occupation or were kind of at war with other countries, because their movement, like karate or Tai Chi or whatever else, a lot of it was standing, and a lot of it was faster moving. And he said you go to countries that really hadn't had war for a really long time, and they would stand in one posture doing yoga for a whole day, or they would do things on the ground yoga, right? But you could tell that the ones who had more of the survival triggers, or, more military or newly, wars that had been waged on them, that they had different types of movements, like that karate and stuff like that were standing, and you were able to move faster wherever you needed to go. Where in India, you could lay in one yoga posture, for 8 hours and not be disturbed. You could just tell by the whole structure of their society what kind of conflict their countries had been through, and how much conflict, right? Just, the spiritual practices, just like the movements, right?
So what's going on with the current conflict? You said something about language and that, what do you think is deeper beyond what's going on in the world? I heard that the real bad guys left their minions in charge and got thrown out, and that at this point the minions have screwed the pooch far enough that it's all going to fall apart. Is that sort of what's going on?
I don't know. I have my own ideas and my own feelings, and I kind of gauged some of it on my star family, and my star family doesn't come in here. That's why I kind of like lean towards some of the flat Earth philosophy, because if there is a filament, right, we're in a simulated
firmament.
The sky changes all the time because it's a computer program, I think, based on who's looking at it at the given moment. That's why, clouds are different all the time. I do believe that they do spray everything, I think, because they're an attempt to kill a lot of things off. I do believe, we're like rats in a maze in a controlled, environment. And, in the past, they've used different things to exterminate us. Whole populations of us. And then they'll, start over again. I think that, we're in a massive extermination phase. I mean, just look at what they did in New Zealand. It's, coming out in the media, and it's horrific what they've done to the forest. They've literally, dumped all this poison by airplanes, and literally it's killed every single animal, including the fish, in all of the forests and environment, and it's poisoned the water, in the rivers and everything else. I mean, it's really, really a serious thing, and they're going to be doing it every year, basically until there's no life left, right? And so, they're in this, extermination phase. And, I believe mud flood or whatever else, however you want to say it, the world floods, or maybe there were floods in different areas, or however else you want to deal with the past history. I believe that was done to us, right? I don't think that more and more, I don't believe in a lot of, regular type science, because, I've used my critical thinking to rethink some of this stuff. And also, my star family has talked to me, about things, but they don't come here. And I think that it's because there's something that keeps them from coming here. It's been really difficult for me to figure out, because it's not a subject that we talk about. The last time that I was in close proximity to them was in August 2014. And they sent a hologram, right, information, an interactive information thing here. And, I picked it up, and I went on a trip to go do 10 days of study with a man named Babadoh, native elder Shoshone medicine man, who was my last native teacher, who died in June 2016. And on my way there, and I was pulled out and was in the holographic interaction with them. And so we don't really discuss, there's certain things that aren't really discussed. So they don't really come here. So the thing is, for whatever reason that they can't come here, or they can't get through whatever to get here to actually figure out what's going on here. And they're not, it's not that they're not worried, but they don't concern themselves with what's going to happen to the planet. They don't inject any of that kind of, the Greys are really good about that kind of stuff, but they don't really inject any of that stuff. It's more about individualized, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Well, this is why this is going on with you. And usually it'll be five to seven streams of conversation that are going on that are coming into my head that are putting together like a puzzle. It's usually fast and furious. But because they don't come here, they can't get here for some reason, and they have to send me these things. I call them port keys, from like Harry Potter, because, like I'll have a dream about them, and I'll be like walking through the desert, and there it'll be, so I know that I have to pick it up and take it with me until the download comes through or whatever happens. And then once, the information is gone, I'll usually carry it with me for another period of time. And then I download information into it that I figured out, and then usually I'll have it in my car or something like that. And then what'll happen is that I'll have a thought like pull off the side of the road and take it out of my car and put it under this tree, or dig a hole and bury it under this tree. And I know it's because they're going to come back and pick it up. Maybe in the future it'll be there for them to pick up. I know it sounds really crazy, but I still have a lot of loose ends on how the technology that they're using is working, because they don't really know a lot about what's going on here. Even though they have sent star kids, I'm a star kid, they've sent us here before. And I tell them not to send anybody else because it's a really horrible place. And I've seen other worlds, and I've seen other planets, and I've seen how things are, I don't know, outside of here. And so I know for a fact that we have been harvested from other planets. We have, and this is going to be really hard for people to deal with, but they're even some of the most enlightened planets that I've seen working with people, doing what I called seated shamanism sessions, going down to sometimes it appears where they originated and they didn't participate on their planet in the way that they needed to participate. And they were given many, 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 many chances. And that at some point they were, when, the only word that I can come up with, like a prison, they were kind of imprisonated. And then when other, star fleets or whatever came by, in a lot of cases they were given to these people. And then when those bodies died, some of them were just energies. Some places people were harvested. They lived as energies, together, separatized type energies.
Well,
on their planet. But
current loose harvesting is an energy form. The way they stir people up, the current loose harvest, the way they get people stirred up to fight, is a way of vampirizing human energy. So the more we get frustrated with things and act out and generate energy, that energy somehow feeds their circuits. So
right, but this is the deal. At some point, we're going to have to fight. At some point, we're going to have to fight them. At some point, we're going to have to stand up and we're going to have to fight them. Otherwise, the system is going to keep going on. And that's the thing, is that, a lot of people that are here have been harvested. And when they die, like, the heaven experience is the same as a UFO, right? Or if the ETs came and visited you, it's a tractor beam, right? And why people can't figure this out? So, because they can't critically think. They're like, oh yeah, they have seen these stories of these people who, went numb, they couldn't, avoid the light, and then the light sucked them up and took them into a UFO, and all kinds of stuff happened. And then the same experience happens with death. The same exact experience happens with death, right? Maybe a little less scary, but
I'm not sure we die. I've gotten beyond that one.
Right, so you get pulled up UFO experience, and they give you, so your soul is usually picked up, or your energy body, or the ETs call it the ISB. You get picked up in this 15 minutes after you die. That's why you have like the Tibetan Buddhism and a lot of the ancient type shamanism practices. They spend, like the Tibetan Buddhists, they spend like their whole lifetime preparing for death so that they can beat the obstacle course, so that they're not recaptured, right? And then forced into incarnation, that they can more so sit on the sidelines and then incarnate at will versus their will being taken away. But they practice their whole lifetime, and they have a support group where there's songs and chants when this person dies for like 90 days, where they sing different kinds of songs and chants to tell the person where they're at in their death phase, so that they don't get captured in the tractor beam, right? And then taken up to the heaven experience. And once you get taken up to the heaven experience, that's why, like all these, master council and, all these different things that people see is to capture you, right? And there's a moment where they may have not utilized all your energy field. You may have died early, and they'll actually send you back. And then you mind control other people by telling them about this, crazy, lavish experience that you had in heaven or hell. And they send you back to finish you off energetically. And this is why I believe people are living less and less time. And that's why you see so many like childhood diseases, because the person doesn't have, when they are forced to incarnate back into the planet, they're bleeding their energy systems dry. So there's not even going to be a soul or ISB left. It's contrary. It's the opposite of you're reincarnating to evolve. If that was true, I've seen people who've lived like 400 lifetimes on this planet and have no evolution at all spiritually. So they're actually downgraded every time, because every time they capture you in an electronic prison and they hold you and then they force you back into the slave system, then you you lose more and more energy as they bleed your battery dry until there's nothing left. So that's kind of like what we're dealing with. And that's why people are living less and less. I mean, like right now in the United States, life expectancy is 65 years.
Really? Well, is that because a lot of children die now? Because infant mortality has gone from nearly 0 back up to like 10%?
No, I think it's like in California it's 35% because of Fukushima. Just the radiation.
Well, is infant mortality, does that include abortions and spontaneous?
No.
Okay, that's just after birth, the child then dies.
Yeah. Mhm.
How do we get good statistics on that?
Well, there were some doctors that were trying to come out in California about it, and they were really concerned that, the radiation from Fukushima was starting to affect, of course it would affect infants. I mean, it targets children first, right? And nuclear radiation targets reproductive, organs, and also, thyroid and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's like a no-brainer. And, this other thing, too, is like, 2 years after Fukushima, the cattle ranchers in California, even the organic ones, were having to slaughter some of their cattle early. And what they would do is they'd hide it from the USDA by taking the heads off the cows earlier, because the cows were blind with eye cancer. And it would be like, like something like 65% of the herd, especially like closer to the ocean, like Petaluma, and all those kinds of areas. And so they were actually hiding it. And then, they've gotten rid of a lot of the radiation detectors now across the whole United States. I mean, we were peaking at 600, and in 2013 we peaked for 6 months at like 600 and something like 34 CPMs a day. And then they shut down the nuclear detectors.
Karen, go ahead.
I just wanted to add something to your question about statistics based on personal experience of knowledge. I don't know that this would be the best source to look for it, but I do know from working on a level 1 trauma children's emergency that the statistics for SIDS was so great that anything that involved in death after birth, it was just clumped into SIDS. And I know that as early as 2009, 2010, whether you want to call it your coroner, in our county it's called the medical examiner, there was a broad scale approach to basically social workers and medics. Like if medics responded to a scene and a child was dead on arrival, or if child came to the emergency room and they basically were dead on arrival or became dead, we had to call the medical examiner instantly so that they could begin to collect information so that not all of these kids were lumped into sudden infant death syndrome. Just in the past decade, I know that they've been trying to really differentiate things in between, and to do that you actually have to get in on the scene early to identify, well, where was the child found, like what do the blankets look like, that kind of stuff, because it just seemed too high a probability to have that many kids all dying from sudden infant death syndrome. So just wanted to throw that resource out there, medical examiners and coroners.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and the medical examiner and coroners are probably the most corrupt in our whole system. The coroners are actually the highest legal authority over the state attorney.
I don't disagree. I just wanted to let Dr. Lenny know. Yeah. So, for what it's worth, I just wanted you to know that there was this coordinated effort. Now, if there were sinister, subverted reasons for doing that, I don't know. The answer could be that there is no way to get accurate statistics.
Yeah. I know from Nevada, from being in the medical field, we don't contribute statistics of nuclear type cancer to the national statistics. So breast cancer, prostate cancer, thyroid cancer, those types of cancers, we don't contribute because, we had 1,500, nuclear bombs that went off. And the fallout from that and the airstream debris went all the way up from Las Vegas all the way through Nevada up into St. George, Utah. So we run about 222 CPMs daily, just regularly, but with the Fukushima, it's been escalating. And 100 is emergency, And also, people should know that when you fly on an airplane, that you are exposed to 100 or more CPMs without the fallout of all the nuclear stuff. I mean, there's a guy who was posting videos on YouTube who now has been taken down. But he was showing, flying across the Midwest where a lot of the nuclear radiation stuff is still going on from Fukushima that up there, that periodically rains down. He showed that it went up, it spiked to 1,400 CPMs.
Wow. Hey, Bridgette, I don't know if you're able to. I would, as you're talking about that kind of thing, and given what we were talking about earlier about global destruction, and I know your disdain for Dallas and LA and the energy field that it brings you, if you scroll up a couple comments, I posted a picture from I was just interested, what's your first thought when you look at it? If you have time, if not, I just wanted you to at least see it.
Yeah, I have no idea. Where did you post that photo at?
In the radio clubhouse chat.
Okay.
It came on suddenly without warning on a day that 20% rain, and it basically decimated Dallas. The power, the trees, all of the trees came down. And I just literally yesterday, after 10 days, have everything restored. What's crazy is there were no funnel clouds, no tornadoes, no touchdowns, and the thing passed through very quickly. It moved directly from north to south, starting in Kansas, and magically dispersed before the Mexico borderline. Anyway, so some person that was driving on the highway, their passenger caught this. It was actually a video, and I took a still picture of the video, and it's just so weird because I kept telling people it felt like I was under Niagara Falls. It was crazy.
Yeah,
it was weird.
Well, they have technology, to like do all this weird weather stuff, and I really think like we're under serious attack. And this is a really kind of an interesting thing. A long time ago, well, not a long time ago, but I don't know, maybe 15 years ago or something like that, maybe close to 20, I don't know. I tumbled along a guy named George Green. And I'm still on the fence about George Green. But George Green was a guy who he worked for the cabal. And he would go in and gut banks. And basically, he was an architect to, liquidate all bank assets after the bank went under or closed. He was involved with the S&Ls and, the Clintons when, thousands and thousands of people lost all their money in those banks. They never got 1 cent out. But he would go in once the bank was in trouble, and he would liquidate their assets for the cabal and the bad guys or whatever else. And then he had a daughter who was like 13, and basically the cabal members, wanted to share his daughter, and that was kind of like the last straw that he could handle. And they said, well, if you don't, participate, then, we'll destroy your life. And they did. They shut down his bank accounts. They shut down his real construction company. He had nothing left. And then, they kicked him off his properties, even though the properties that he owned. And, he was completely homeless and destitute. And he says that the ETs, and I had at one point emailed him and had like a really strange back and forth email thing for a while. So I'm not completely like sold on him, but I think that he also became an agent of deception. And he talks about how, the extraterrestrials started talking to him about what the planet was going to be like in a short period of time because of all these storms that were going to be hitting the planet for such and such reason. And the reason why, I'm like really on the fence about this is because I'm not really sure we're a planet. And I'm not really sure that we're actually in a universe, and I'm not really sure that we're traveling through the universe anymore. I think that we're more like a rat's maze system, and that even the spiritual people, even the people that are supposed to be awake, are being fed false information, and they're going about their life acting as if this information is real, when we know 100% that all the storms that are happening on our planet right now are being caused by technology that individuals have, that governments have. I mean, we have HARPs, set up all over the place now, and all you have to do is see what the level of HARP is. All these I forget what they're called, radar something, but they're activating heat. And then we have all this spray and everything else that's going on top of it. And so they're really chemically and technology whipping up these cocktails and attacking areas. Why is Texas attacked? Because Texas has never really been a part of the United States. It always has really been on its own. And it has its own power systems, and not only, it doesn't have a monopoly on power. You can the next day get pissed off at your power company and go sign up at another power company, because there's no monopoly on power in Texas. And this is why there's, huge amounts of solar and all this other stuff. And Texas, it turns out, it has, and I recently got an account there this year, its own gold depository, because it turns out that most of the gold that the United States has been